They thought he was just some washed-up drifter in a ball cap. He watched, he waited, and then he took the hat off. The midday sun scorched the asphalt outside Iron Line Motors, its glass front shimmering like a showroom smile, polished, gleaming fake. Chuck Norris didn't see the shine. He saw the cracks beneath it. A sun-faded cap shaded his eyes. His beard, longer than usual, was dusted in gray. A loose denim jacket masked the coiled tension in his frame. From a distance, he looked like any old-timer browsing for a used ride. Safe, unremarkable, exactly how he wanted it. He took a breath and stepped through the glass doors. Inside, the smell of fresh leather clashed with old coffee. Voices filled the space. Overconfident, too friendly, the kind of rehearsed charm that sells you something while stealing your wallet. By the glossy black pickup, a salesman in a blazer too sharp and a haircut too perfect flashed a fake grin at a nervous young couple. Chuck scanned the room, polished tile, corporate banners, muffled laughter from behind desks. Still something felt wrong, not obvious, just the oily residue of something rotten behind the sheen. At the front counter, a clipboard lay abandoned beside a stack of pristine brochures. He picked it up. Scanned the names. Sales rotation week 17. There it was again. Circled in red. Top numbers, top returns, top complaints. A name that lived in too many reports. Always waved away by district managers. He gets results. Some clients are difficult. No proof. Chuck liked results too. Just not the kind that stink. He set the clipboard down and kept walking. A tall figure approached. Early 30s. Clean-shaven, eyes sharp. Kyle, looking for something specific today, sir? His voice was bright, polished, practiced. Chuck tilted his head like he was thinking, maybe a truck. Something dependable. Kyle's grin grew. The scent of commission was in the air. A perfect. Got just the one. He turned, motioning toward a sleek SUV in the back. Chuck followed, silent. This beauty got a brand new engine 2 weeks ago, Kyle said, slapping the hood. A client wrecked the last one. Drives like a dream. Chuck's eyes narrowed slightly. That was a lie. He knew the service logs. That SUV hadn't been touched in months. Just waxed and given a budget tire job. But Chuck didn't flinch. He ran a hand along the hood's edge. I got paperwork on that engine swap? He asked, voice casual. Kyle paused. Just a beat, but enough. Yeah, back in the office. I'll grab it when you're ready to sign. Chuck nodded slowly. Then came a voice from nearby, uncertain but firm. Actually, that engine wasn't replaced. They turned. A young woman stood nearby, gloves stained with grease, ponytail tight. Her name tag read Emily. Kyle's jaw tightened. Emily, go check the tire rotation list or something. She didn't budge. That SUV came in for brakes, nothing more. No engine job. Chuck looked at her, said nothing, but behind the silence something shifted. Truth, the first of the day. Kyle let out a stiff laugh. She's new. Doesn't know the full file. Chuck's expression didn't change. He glanced once at the SUV, then at Emily, didn't smile, didn't nod, just made a note. She tells the truth. And Kelly just lied to the wrong man. Kyle's grin stayed up. Oh, she's still learning, he said again, this time more to himself. Come on, Kyle added, brushing past Emily. Let me show you the interior. Chuck followed, still silent. Under the bright showroom lights, the SUV glistened. Midnight black, flawless, showroom, perfect. But Chuck had seen that look before, like makeup over a bruise. Kyle opened the door like a magician revealing a trick. Leather seats, touchscreen, top-tier quality. Only the best for serious buyers. Chuck stepped in, hand resting on the wheel. It was cold, unused. We get a lot of guys looking for reliable rides, Kyle said. Low mileage, rebuilt powertrain, still under extended warranty. Rebuilt? Chuck asked flatly. Right, Kyle said. I mean fully replaced. Practically new under the hood. Chuck turned slowly. You said brand new earlier. Now it's rebuilt? Kyle didn't blink. It technically refurbished, but all new parts. Same thing. Chuck raised an eyebrow. Neutral. Dangerous. Got a service log? Another pause. Just long enough. Sure. I'll grab it from the system when we sit down. It's all in there. Chuck nodded once, slow. Chuck's voice didn't change. The engine. You said it was replaced 2 weeks ago. Which shop? Kyle laughed awkwardly. Oh, man, I'd have to check. We've got vendors. Probably one of our guys downtown, doesn't matter. Our team inspects everything before it hits the lot. Chuck glanced toward the back of the showroom, the closed service bay doors. They'd remember doing that job? He asked. Kyle's eyes narrowed just slightly. Probably not. They move quick. But hey, I can get you the inspection report back at my desk. Paper trail and all that. Chuck nodded. The walls were closing in, not around Chuck, around the man standing in front of him. And Kyle had no idea. He waved Chuck toward the desk area with an eager smile. Let's head over. Got some wiggle room on the price today. Knock a few hundred off if we move quick. Chuck didn't move. Chuck didn't move. He glanced at the SUV, then turned his eyes on Kyle. You said the engine was wrecked, Chuck said. Oh, what about the body? Kyle blinked. Come again. Chuck's gaze didn't waver. You said the engine was totaled, but the body's flawless. Not a scratch, no frame damage. No insurance notation. What kind of wreck destroys the engine without touching the fender? Kyle opened his mouth, paused, then recovered with a smile. Kuda slick. You know how it is. Some folks just don't take care of their rides. Could have been internal. We don't always get the full backstory. Chuck nodded. Outwardly agreeable, inwardly assembling a pattern. This wasn't the first time Kyle had leaned on that vague script. Just another spin on a lie he'd told before. But all Chuck said was, let's take a look at the papers. Kyle grinned. Absolutely. Right this way. Chuck followed, quiet as a shadow. And shadows, he knew, had a way of turning into storms. The hallway to the service bay felt tighter than he remembered. Same beige walls, same flickering fluorescence, but something had changed. The place felt hollow, like something once solid had quietly rotted from the inside. Kyle veered off toward the finance office, promising to grab the paperwork. Chuck let him go. Instead, he headed for the garage. A faint clatter of metal echoed down the corridor. Then a voice, sharp and irritated. Next time, don't interrupt me in front of a customer. Oh, Chuck slowed at a half-open door. Inside, Emily stood rigid by a tool bench across from her. A stocky mechanic in his 40s. Tag said Doug. I wasn't trying to embarrass you, Emily said, her voice firm but calm. Just told the truth. Doug scoffed. Well, that truth might have cost us a sale. You want to start paying Kyle's commissions? I just want the customer to know what they're buying, she replied softly. Chuck moved closer, unseen. Doug shook his head, grabbing a wrench. Well, this isn't an ethics class, it's sales. If Kyle wants to dress it up to close, that's not your call. I work on those engines, Emily snapped. If something's wrong, I'm not lying about it. Doug muttered under his breath and stormed off. Chuck waited until the footsteps faded. Then he stepped inside. Emily didn't notice him at first, focused on a battered sedan, adjusting a socket wrench with precise, steady hands. Grease smudged her sleeves. Oil marked her cheek. No show. No script. Just honest work. She looked up and startled. Oh, sorry. This area is off limits to customers. Chuck didn't correct her. We're Emily, he said, voice even. She nodded, cautious. That's right. You told the truth earlier. About the SUV. She wiped her hands on a rag, still guarded. Yeah, I wasn't trying to stir trouble. You just didn't want anyone getting lied to. She hesitated. It happens more than you'd think. Chuck studied her. You ever report it? Emily exhaled through her nose. Oh, once. A few months back. Different car, same story. The regional manager didn't follow up. Frank told me not to raise issues unless I had proof. She shrugged. So now I keep quiet, unless it's serious. And even then, they don't really listen. Chuck nodded slowly. Oh. What made you speak up today? She looked him in the eye. Because it was wrong, she said, and someone was listening. That answer wasn't trained. It was real. Something solid in a place full of cracks. Chuck looked around. No other techs had stepped in. No one else had backed her up. Just Emily. Thanks for saying it, he said at last. Emily blinked, surprised. You're welcome. My name's Jack, he said, giving the alias he'd registered with. Just looking for the truth under the hood. She gave a faint smile. Then you came to the right place. Chuck turned and walked back toward the showroom. His thoughts were already shifting. This wasn't about one lying salesman anymore. It was about a place where telling the truth made you a problem, and Chuck was about to become a much bigger one. The office Kyle led him into looked like every other closing room in the business. Tan walls, laminated desk, a faded photo of a muscle car over a cheap printer. A lemon-scented air freshener tried and failed to mask years of stress and broken promises. Kyle gestured grandly at the chair. "Take a seat, my man. Let's get you all set." Chuck lowered himself slowly, eyes scanning the room. Same setup, same tricks. Kyle booted up the monitor with a salesman's energy. A So Black SUV, upgraded engine, extended warranty. He leaned in, "And since you didn't blink at the price, maybe I throw in a little something extra." Chuck leaned back. "Let's see the documents first." Kyle chuckled. "Straight to the paperwork." "I respect that." He tapped keys and opened a manila folder. "Here's the report. Clean title, no accidents. Says right here, powertrain service March 3rd. That's your engine replacement." Chuck leaned forward, calm. "Service doesn't mean replaced." Kyle smiled like he'd just been complimented. "Well, off the record," Kyle said with a wink, "we just don't advertise it. In case something goes sideways. You know how lawsuits go." Chuck didn't blink. "I'd still like to see the full inspection file." A pause, barely a flicker. "Yeah, sure," Kyle said. "We'll have Frank send that over. Might take a minute." Chuck folded his arms, voice flat. "You said it was a brand new engine. Then you said refurbished. Now it's just serviced." Kyle shrugged. "End of the day, man, it drives like new." The silence dragged like a brake line snapping. Chuck let it stretch until Kyle twitched. Then Kyle leaned in, trying another angle. "Oh, look, you seem like a straight shooter. Let me give it to you real. Car's been sitting a while. We cleaned it up, tuned it, slapped on fresh tires. Do I know if every bolt's brand new? Nah, but the price reflects that." Chuck raised an eyebrow. "So it's not a new engine." Kyle dropped his voice, confidential now. "It's sales. People don't buy what the paper says. They buy what they feel. And you—" Chuck stared. "Hard." Kyle smiled, teeth bright and desperate. "Come on. Let's write this up. I'll knock off 500. Today only." He slid the contract across the desk. It looked clean, crisp, until you hit the fine print where the lies like to live. Tiny clauses, buried limits, nothing illegal, just dishonest enough to matter. "You get a lot of returns?" Chuck asked softly. Kyle blinked. "Huh, people come back, complaining, asking questions." Kyle waved it off. "What happens? Frank smooths it over. Some folks are just picky." Chuck picked up the pen Kyle had laid out, balanced it in his fingers, then set it down. "Sure, just can't promise that price tomorrow. Got other folks eyeing it." Another classic trick, urgency. Chuck had written that script back in the 90s, when sales still had a soul behind the pitch. He stood slowly. "I'll take my chances." Kyle nodded stiffly. "Your call." Chuck walked to the door, boots whispering against laminate. At the threshold, he paused. "I'll make sure that inspection report's ready next time I come." Kyle forced a smile. "Of course," but Chuck already knew. There was no report, just a story wrapped in a suit. And Kyle was about to meet the man behind the name. Chuck stepped out of the office. No signature, no deal, just the echo of lies humming behind him like a jingle that wouldn't quit. He didn't walk fast. He didn't need to. A few customers milled around the showroom. One salesman chatted up an older couple by the front desk. Kyle was still behind the glass, refreshing an inbox that held nothing. Chuck paused near a display hybrid. Emily was there, wiping down the hood, movements precise and silent. She looked up. "You heading out?" she asked. "Not just yet," Chuck said. Before she could answer, a voice cut through the showroom. "Everything all right here?" Frank Dawson, mid-50s. Sport coat too tight, smile too polished. The kind of man who hadn't touched a wrench since dial-up internet, but always had a number to hit. He extended a hand as he approached. Frank Dawson. I manage this location. Kyle said you had a few questions. Chuck shook his hand. Firm! Silent. Frank laughed, trying to lighten the moment. Sorry if there was any confusion. Happens when we've got new staff. His eyes flicked to Emily. I'm sure Kyle explained everything. Chuck's voice was calm. He explained a lot. Frank's smile tightened. Good. We pride ourselves on transparency. Chuck didn't reply. Instead, he removed his hat. Emily blinked. Frank squinted. Behind the glass, Kyle went still. Chuck took off his glasses. Ooh. Ran a hand through silver hair, then looked Frank in the eye. I know exactly how that SUV got here, he said, voice even. Because I signed the delivery invoice myself. Frank's face shifted. Confusion, then recognition, then dread, the slow kind that settles into the gut like cold iron. Chuck's voice sharpened, quieter now. Every word a scalpel. I read the service logs. That engine was replaced. The warranty pitch. Fiction. Kyle sold it straight to my face. Frank opened his mouth, but no sound came. Kyle stepped out of the office, pale. I'm Chuck Norris, Chuck said. Investor. Majority stakeholder. The room froze. No one laughed. He turned to Kyle. You've been lying to customers, then to Frank, and you've been letting it happen. I neither spoke. Chuck let the silence settle like dust in a tomb. I came here because something fell off, he said, voice coiled. I didn't think I'd be proven right this fast. Frank's jaw twitched. Kyle looked ready to vanish. Chuck gave them one last glance. Get your manager, he said to Frank. The real one. The one who's supposed to be watching. Then Chuck turned toward the back office. He wasn't done yet. Behind him, Frank shut the office door with a quiet click, as if silence could soften what was coming. Chuck stood in the center of the room. Still, focused. Frank moved to his desk, tugged at his collar. Customer bought a hybrid with battery damage we didn't tell them about. Frank gave him a free detail and told me to stay out of it. Chuck leaned back in his chair. Why speak up now? Emily looked him in the eye. Because this wasn't just a sale. It was a lie. And I'm tired of pretending I don't hear them. The silence wasn't heavy. Just real. Chuck tapped a knuckle on the desk. You've got guts. She gave a faint smile. That's not what Doug said. Chuck's mouth twitched. Doug's wrong. He leaned forward slightly. Let me tell you what's next. We're cleaning this place up. No more fake engines. No more word games. But I can't do it alone. Emily blinked. Her face softened, part disbelief, part cautious hope. You want me to help? I want you to keep being what you were today, Chuck said. Mechanic who tells the truth, even when no one else does. She was quiet for a long beat. What if they don't like it? Chuck shrugged. Then they'll leave, and we'll find people who do. She exhaled. Half a laugh, half relief. Chuck stood, nodded to the door. Go back out there. Do your job. And if anyone gives you grief, send them to me. She stood too, taller now. When she left the office, Chuck didn't follow. He just stood at the window looking out over the service bay. For the first time that day, he saw something worth building on. Chuck stepped onto the showroom floor. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. One by one, heads turned. A junior salesman froze mid-pitch. A tech assistant halted with coffee in hand. Doug looked up from a clipboard and instinctively stepped back. Frank stood near the entrance, trying to look calm. Kyle lingered behind the finance desk, arms crossed, jaw locked. Chuck moved to the center of the room. The silence settled around him like dust in a garage with the engine off. I'm not here to make a scene, Chuck said, voice low but steady. I'm here to tell you what's changing. The room stayed still, eyes forward, breath held. Chuck let his gaze sweep across the team. I've been part of this business longer than some of you have been alive. I've seen things go bad before, but I've never seen it rot from the inside like this. He paused. No yelling, no theatrics, just truth. He looked at Kyle. A car was misrepresented. A warranty was lied about. And it wasn't the first time. Kyle didn't speak. Didn't need to. The shame had already arrived ahead of him. Chuck turned to the rest of the floor. I'm not firing anyone today. A flicker of surprise rippled through the crowd. But starting now, the rules have changed. You let it breathe. If you're going to sell a car here, you tell the truth. If the engine's old, say so. If the warranty's short, spell it out. If you can't hit your numbers without bending the facts, you won't be hitting them here at all. Frank shifted behind him, but Chuck didn't look. You think honesty makes us weak? Chuck asked. It doesn't. It makes us dangerous because customers come back to people they trust. He took a step forward, small, heavy. And right now we've got a trust deficit so deep it could bury this whole place. He nodded toward the service bay. Emily stood just inside the threshold, grease still on her hands, watching. She stood up today when no one else did, Chuck said. That's not weakness, that's leadership. He turned back to the room. If you're not comfortable with that, there's the door. No one moved. Chuck nodded once. Final, back to work, but this time do it right. The spell broke. People stirred, phones picked, conversations resumed, quiet, tentative. But the air had changed. Chuck didn't walk off like a man satisfied. He walked like someone just getting started. The next morning the floor was quieter, not silent, just careful. Chuck didn't need to speak. His presence said enough. Word had spread. Every whisper was half measured, every handshake slower. It wasn't fear that hung in the air. It was reckoning. Kyle packed, closed the door, and walked out. Doug muttered something under his breath. Chuck let it go for now. By mid-morning, the cracks showed. Two salesmen near the front kept glancing toward Chuck as they reviewed listings. Their voices were low, their scripts uncertain. Frank stayed in his office, door half shut, pretending to review deals. The confidence he once wore like cologne had thinned. But in the service bay, something else was happening. Emily stood beside an older couple, maybe in their 60s, showing them the undercarriage of a used sedan. It wasn't her job, but when they asked about the service record, she didn't blink. This one had a transmission flush and new brake pads, she said. No engine work. It's clean, but it's not new. The man frowned. Salesman said it had a full overhaul. Emily didn't flinch. But then he's wrong. You can ask Chuck if you want to verify. He's on the floor today. The couple exchanged a look. How long have you been working here? The woman asked. Emily smiled just faintly. Almost a year. Almost a year. You're not afraid to speak up like that? Emily shrugged. Not anymore. Chuck watched from a distance. He didn't step in. Didn't need to. Later, at the reception desk, a junior sales associate, Kevin, approached Emily quietly. What you said earlier. To that couple. That was gutsy. Emily looked up. It was just the truth. Kevin hesitated, hands in his pockets. Yeah, but nobody used to say it like that. Emily wiped her hands on a rag, met his eyes. Maybe it's time someone did. He didn't reply. Just nodded once and walked off, leaving behind something rare. Respect. Chuck turned from the glass wall overlooking the floor. The change was slow, but it had begun. Not from a memo, not from a training manual, from a mechanic with grease on her sleeves telling the truth loud enough that people started listening. That afternoon, the lobby didn't feel busier or brighter. It felt honest. Chuck stood at the front desk beside Emily, reviewing a service report. Behind them, the dealership moved with a new rhythm. Slower, maybe, but cleaner. The front door chimed. A woman stepped in, mid-50s, sharp-eyed, shoulders drawn tight. A younger man followed close behind. Her son, maybe. Both carried the same expression Chuck had seen too many times before. Suspicion. She approached the counter, clutching a folder. I was told to come in, she said. My name's Linda Rosario. I bought a hybrid here 5 months ago. Engine failed in 3 weeks. Chuck nodded. We've been reviewing past deals. I'm the one who called you. She blinked. You're the manager? Chuck shook his head. No, I'm the one who should have been paying attention sooner. He gestured toward a small meeting area. Would you sit with me for 5 minutes? She hesitated, then followed. Emily trailed behind, a folder in hand. Quiet, present, they sat. Chuck opened Linda's paperwork. This car was sold to you as certified pre-owned, he said. But the certification checklist was never completed. The inspection form, blank. I knew something was off, but they kept saying it was covered. And that's on us. He slid a fresh document across the table. This is a revised contract. You'll be refunded for the original sale, including warranty costs. If you're open to it, we've located another hybrid. Newer, lower mileage. Full inspection verified by Emily. No pitch. No smile. Just facts. Linda looked at the papers, then at Emily. You did the inspection? Emily nodded. Every bolt? The younger man spoke for the first time. Why are you doing this now? Chuck answered. Because we forgot who we were. And now we're fixing it. It's often not trusting that yet, but something closer to open. You think one car makes that right? Chuck met her gaze. No, he said. But it's where we start, she signed. As she left papers in hand, she looked back once, not smiling, not forgiving, but maybe believing again. Emily turned to Chuck. I felt good. Chuck exhaled. It's not about feeling good, it's about doing right. They stood in the quiet, just two people, one rebuilding trust, the other learning it was possible. And above the front desk, newly mounted that morning, a brushed steel plaque caught the afternoon light. It read, Truth drives trust.